PewDiePie's decision to switch to Linux has sparked a lot of discussion, and as usual in our community, also some suspicion. In the past few days, a second video followed, in which the YouTuber openly lashes out against Google and talks about his experience with Linux, saying it's changing his life and perspective. He's on a journey to leave all Google services behind. Well, I think this person is very brave. He has 110 million subscribers and would normally have completely opposite interests, rather than going against Google and siding with Linux. Google can wipe you out in an instant, and it's easy to be forgotten in just a few days. I don't see any hidden agenda here, just the creator's clear enthusiasm and genuine curiosity for our ecosystem, and I believe we should all give him credit for that. What we truly need is to break out of the nerdy bubble that common perception has trapped us in and show the world that Linux is cool, normal, human, and that even people whose interests aren't strictly technical are using it. That's not a minor detail. Who is PewDiePie? Let's take a look at who PewDiePie is. His real name is Felix Kjellberg, and he's one of the most influential creators in YouTube history. Born in Sweden in 1989, he started his channel in 2010 and over the years became a true icon of the platform. Felix began by creating gaming content, primarily focusing on horror and indie games. His energetic style, exaggerated reactions, and unique sense of humor helped him grow rapidly. For many years, he held the title of the most subscribed YouTube channel in the world, over 100 million subscribers, before being surpassed by channels like T-Series. Felix is known for his irreverent humor, direct engagement with his audience, often referred to as the 9-year-olds or 19-year-olds, and for having a huge impact on YouTube culture and internet memes. Today, he lives in Japan with his wife Marzia and is considered one of the pioneers of content creation on YouTube. So, having someone so popular and relatable among Linux users, especially for younger generations, is important. It's a sign that we're slowly moving out of our technological niche in the desktop space and reaching a more conscious, broader audience. But not everything that glitters is gold. When I first started, there were real Linux pioneers. Desktop versions of Linux probably had fewer than 10,000 users on the entire planet, and I'm not talking about the early 2000s, but the second half of the 90s. I'll one day tell the full story of the person who introduced me to Linux, because he was truly unique and special. Back then, when he began exploring Linux, it wasn't just hard to install. It was hard to even know it existed. Let me share a small anecdote. This person used to travel frequently to the United States. He was obsessed with the country and had a friend in Cupertino who worked in a lab run by Olivetti, a very peculiar tech company, which I might cover in a future video. That friend was already tinkering with Linux, but didn't want to install it himself. So my mentor grabbed the floppy disks, packed them in his suitcase, and brought them back with him. Still, he couldn't manage to install Slackware at first. But he didn't give up. Months later, on another trip to California, again to Cupertino, he got in touch with the Silicon Valley Linux user group. They gave him all the instructions and support he needed to get the system up and running. Mind you, this friend of mine lived in a place where the internet hadn't even arrived yet in 1995. Just think how ahead of his time he was. Maybe we've forgotten where we come from, and we take it for granted that Linux has always been accessible to everyone. Yes, Linux is accessible, just like my videos are accessible. But if Google suddenly decides not to show them in your feed anymore, you won't see them, even if you're subscribed to my channel. Maybe a small percentage of people will actively search for my channel by typing its name in the search bar. And yes, I know I have a loyal core audience who won't forget about me. But let's be honest, accessibility and open source mean nothing without communication and mainstream dissemination of knowledge. And I'm not talking about the fact that Linux exists and is downloadable. I'm talking about real shared experience, something that spreads widely and leaves a lasting impression on millions of people. PewDiePie isn't Richard Stallman or Linus Torvalds. He's a YouTuber. A millionaire YouTuber, actually, given the number of subscribers he has. But he's incredibly influential, and I admire the fact that he chose to take a stand and put everything at risk for Linux. I don't think there's any hidden agenda here, only risks. And that's why I believe this guy is brave. Maybe it's easier when you have 110 million subscribers. Or maybe, precisely because of that, it's much harder. But here's what really fascinates me about this moment. We're witnessing a collision between two completely different philosophies. On one hand, you have the Linux ethos, built by volunteers, driven by principles, sustained by community passion. On the other hand, you have the influencer economy, built on algorithms, driven by engagement metrics, sustained by corporate advertising dollars. PewDiePie sits right at the intersection of these two worlds. He's using the very system that Linux seeks to challenge: YouTube, Google's advertising machine, the attention economy, to promote an alternative to that system. It's like using the master's tools to dismantle the master's house, to paraphrase Audre Lorde. And you know what? Maybe that's exactly what we need. Look, I've been in this community long enough to see waves of mainstream attention come and go. Remember when Ubuntu made it onto Dell computers? Remember when Android was going to bring Linux to the masses? Each time we got excited, and each time the revolution was quieter than expected. But this feels different. PewDiePie isn't just installing Linux and moving on. He's documenting the journey, sharing the struggles, celebrating the victories. He's making Linux part of his identity as a creator. When he talks about customizing his desktop environment, getting excited about terminal commands, or ranting about Windows bloatware, that's not content creation. That's genuine enthusiasm being shared with millions of people. And here's the thing. Authenticity is the one currency that still works in our attention-based economy. People can smell fake endorsements from a mile away. But when someone genuinely falls in love with something and shares that excitement, that's contagious. Think about what happens next. PewDiePie's audience isn't just passive consumers. They're participants. They make memes, they create response videos, they influence their friends. Some percentage of those 110 million subscribers will try Linux because of this. Maybe it's just 1%. That's still over 1 million new users. But more importantly, they'll normalize the conversation. Linux will stop being this mysterious thing that only programmers use and start being that thing PewDiePie uses. For a generation that grew up watching YouTube, that's a massive shift in perception. My mentor from the 90s, he had to physically travel to California to find one person who could help him install Slackware. Today, a single video can reach more people than attended every Linux conference in the 90s combined. The scale is mind-boggling. Which brings me to my final point. With great subscriber count comes great responsibility. PewDiePie could have chosen to stay safe, to keep making content that pleases the algorithm, to avoid rocking the boat with his primary revenue source. Instead, he chose to use his platform to promote something he believes in, even if it might not be the most profitable path. That's not just brave, it's what influence should be used for, not just to sell products or drive engagement, but to share genuine discoveries and potentially change minds. So yes, maybe we've come full circle. From passionate pioneers carrying floppy disks across continents, to millionaire YouTubers risking algorithmic demotion for an operating system. It's a weird timeline, but maybe it's exactly the timeline we needed.